Morning. I hope you guys are having a good Thursday, and welcome to our July version of our cybersecurity awareness training program. We do these on a monthly basis. Sometimes the content is the same. A lot of times it does change because the bad guys change their tactics, and I like to kind of talk a little bit about some of the newer stuff that's out there. So these do get updated frequently. Little bit of housekeeping. Everyone's mic is muted. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, we will try to keep an eye on chat as I go through here. If I don't happen to catch it during the presentation, there is a Q&A section at the end. I'll circle back and get get those questions answered for you. My name is Brian. I am the CTO here at PCA Technology Group. I'm also an ethical hacker. That basically just means that most of the stuff that I'm talking about here, I have the capability of actually doing. I know how to do it, and the reason why is because in order to talk intelligently about it, you have to know how to do it and kind of how to stop it as well too. So that's just a little bit about me. Why are we here? Well, if you are plugged into any type of news outlet, social media, whatever, I'm sure you've seen plethora of information going out there about this cybersecurity threat, that cybersecurity threat, this breach, that breach, hacked. You may be a victim of it as well. It's all over the place, and it's not getting any better, unfortunately. And so what we've opted to do is try to educate end users and just kind of communicate to them some of the tactics that the bad folks are doing or trying to do, and hopefully you'll learn a little bit from this, and at least at some point question some things that may look suspicious. If you got a gut feeling that something just doesn't quite look right, your gut is probably correct. And you need to kind of just stop for a minute and hesitate. I know we're all busy, and a lot of places are short staffed, and you might be doing the workload of 2 3 people or whatever. And unfortunately the bad guys are going to try to leverage that that busyness, because when you are busy, you're not necessarily thinking rationally all the time, and you're not careful. You're more worried about, can I get that next project done, or do I have to work late again, or something like that, and you're rushing. And when you start rushing, you may just not necessarily be thinking things through, perhaps if there's something questionable. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about here. We're going to do it in a non-technical way. Now, there is technical content obviously throughout this presentation, but it's one of those things where I try to explain it in a more human-like way, so people understand kind of where I'm coming from. So you can see here just some statistics as well too, that 2022 obviously was a big increase in cyber attacks over 2021. This year obviously is going to increase as well too. This is actually a profitable business model for the bad guys, believe it or not. And there's a lot of money to be made for doing this illegal activity, unfortunately. And it's not so easy to catch them all the time. So just keep that in mind. On the screen here, you might see a couple of company logos as well too. These are companies that have had some sort of fairly significant cyber attack throughout just this year alone. So you can see there's some big companies there. Google's on there, PayPal, T-Mobile, and a bunch of other ones that unfortunately there was some sort of breach or ransomware or something to that effect that these companies have definitely fell victim to. So if companies that size that have very large monetary means to try to stop the bad guys from getting in, what hope does small to medium businesses, like the people that may be attending this call right now, what hope do they have in trying to keep these bad guys out? Well, the good news is that it doesn't always take money. It really takes education, which is again why we hold these series, because educating the users is really the biggest part of this, and we'll explain a little bit more what that means. So the other thing too to keep in mind is that if in fact you do end up in some sort of cybersecurity incident or breach, it's not like the minute it happens, the bad guys or the bad actors are going to let you know. So it's one of those things where they could be in your system for up to 7 months before even being noticed, whether they make themselves noticed or you somehow figure out that there's you're starting to piece together things just don't look right or something suspicious is happening, weird things are happening that you can't explain, and then you may detect them on your own. But usually, it's the bad guys making themselves known at some point in time, and it could be 7 months after the fact that you've been physically breached. And the reason why they do that is a lot of these bad actors aren't physically targeting you as a company or an entity. They kind of throw out a whole bunch of bait, and most of the time it's spam emails or phishing emails or things like that. Sometimes it's malicious websites, and they're just waiting for someone to act on one of those methods. And then once somebody acts on that method and they get a means into the system, then it's one of those situations where, well, now they got to kind of figure out, okay, who took the bait, because they're not necessarily again targeting you specifically. So that's really what they're doing. They're in there figuring out, okay, who is this? Who did we have? And then they figure out, okay, well, what's valuable? Is there credit card information? Is there financial information, insurance information, social security cards, or numbers, credit cards, any type of banking information, any of that type? Is there proprietary, you know, drawings or designs and things like that? That's what they're doing. They're trying to figure out what is valuable, and then what they'll do is they'll do potentially one to three different things. One is they will steal your data and threaten you, and try to extort money out of you, by threatening to post it on the dark web or sell it on the dark web. So they kind of try to do extortion. The second thing is sometimes they will actually encrypt your data. And basically, what that is, it's ransomware. And what they'll do is they will lock your data to the point where you cannot physically access it or utilize it anymore. And they will pop up on their screen saying, hey, you got to pay X amount of crypto coin to unlock this data. And, if you pay this, we'll give you the key to unlock this and you can get your data back. Unless you have a good backup or means to recover that data is, you have no way of physically accessing that data without that key. So obviously you want to try to avoid that situation, because unless you have a good backup situation before that happened, there is no recovery. You will be starting over from scratch basically completely. And the third method is they do both. They actually extort you and ransomware you, so they get you on both sides. The whole point of this is to try to avoid this in the first place, and we'll talk a little bit about how at least some methods and means to try to avoid this in the first place. So who's responsible? Everybody. Everybody on this call is responsible. A lot of times folks think that, oh, well, it's the owners of the company. It's not my company. I'm just an employee. It's the owners of the company. It's my IT department. If you outsource your IT department to a company like us, it's our fault, our problem, or whatever. It's everyone's responsibility. While there are means and things put in place to assist from these things from happening, I will tell you that every one of those big companies on that first page that I showed you that were breached were all breached by a human element. That means somebody physically let them in, whether unknowingly or inadvertently, someone let them in the front door. And that's why everybody on this call is responsible, because there's a human firewall. We call it the human firewall. That is the last line of defense. No matter how much you put in front of a person, that if somebody basically opens up the door, everything you put in front of that is subverted. In simple forms, think of it as your home alarm system. If you have a personal, for your home, you have an alarm system on your house. That alarm system is only as good as you arming that system. So if you're at home all day long and your system is not armed, that system is not protecting you, and somebody could technically force their way in or just walk in if your doors are unlocked. So that's kind of the concept behind this. So you've got to be vigilant and try to stop these things from happening. And we'll show you some tactics that they're using and methods to try to avoid that. So what they do is it's social engineering. Basically, they're manipulating the human tendency to do things or trust. It's extremely easy to do, and you may not even realize that it's happening. So it's just you've got to really be careful in how you're doing things. And again, it's not like you're always just physically being targeted, but there's potential to be inadvertently targeted anywhere you go, and we'll talk about that. Most common attacks, kind of alluded to this earlier, is the first one here is email. So probably 90 to 95% of the social engineering attacks start or happen through email. It's either phishing email, spear phishing, BEC, which stands for business email compromise. We'll talk a little bit about that. And it's one of those situations where you've got to be very vigilant with your email systems, and we'll give you some tips and tricks and tactics on how to do that. Social media, obviously, in this day and age, it seems like everybody has some sort of social media page. That is a plethora of information for the bad guys. I can get employee listings sometimes once I'm in the system. If I want to figure out, if I need to figure out employees or another attack vectors or something, I can go to a LinkedIn page, I can go to a Facebook page, I can go to Twitter, whatever, and get all kinds of information because everybody shares everything about their lives now on social media. So it's pretty easy to do. I can even tell you when you're home and when you're not home because you're posting about your vacation while you're on vacation. Public service announcement, don't do that. You're just basically telling anybody that may be casing your house that you're physically not home. So if you want to post about your vacation, wait till you get back from your vacation, then do it. So trends, obviously, we mentioned ransomware. That's where they encrypt your data. Extortion's where they steal it and threaten to post it on the dark web. There is some automation that's happening now. So keep in mind that, this has become, as I mentioned, this has been a pretty profitable business model. So there's actually bad actors out there that have created systems that anybody could subscribe to if you can find them. They're on, obviously they're on the dark web, but you can sign up for the subscription, and you're paying for them to basically an automated system to do this phishing campaigns and stuff. And if they get somebody to fall for it, it's one of those situations where you get a small piece of that. Keep in mind, you are paying for an illegal activity, and if they figure out that you're the one doing it, you're going to be going to jail as well. So it's just one of those things where you don't have to be a skilled entity anymore to do this. There's services out there that people that have no clue how to do any of this could potentially sign up for and be part of this without having the skill set to do it. And then AI, AI has been in the news a lot, artificial intelligence, and that is also being utilized by the bad actors for various methods of bad acting, basically. So it's used to detect, avoid detection, can be used to write actually the emails and things like that. So no longer are the days where, you may have gotten one of those fake emails from a king in Zimbabwe or some African country that wants to share his wealth with you. And it was pretty easy to detect that, it was broken English and things like that. So, spelling errors and stuff. Well, now they can just use AI to write that letter for them. It's perfect English, perfect punctuation, all that stuff. So it looks very realistic sometimes. So you've got to be careful. Who's behind it? Criminal groups. Sometimes it's third world nations, as I mentioned. Non-allies of U.S. Definitely have entities inside their countries that the government is basically hiring people to do this for them, and because they're again this is a very profitable illegal business, and sometimes that is entities that are doing that. Occasionally it could be a malicious insider, just if there's any any owners or higher up business folks here, that you just got to be careful that, make sure you know who you're hiring and keep an eye on them and limit the access and stuff as well too, because there's always potential for a malicious insider. But again, it's one of those things where it doesn't happen often, but there's potential for it. Attack vectors, most of the time it's via the internet. It very rarely would it be physically on site, unless you're a very juicy target, I would say. Very rarely would it be on site, just because of, most of these attacks are happening outside of the US and done via the internet. So that leads us up to web surfing. So if you were on work resources and you're using your work PC or work laptop, desktop, whatever, to do any type of web surfing, make sure that surfing is kept limited to business use. Don't be shopping for your kid's birthday present, or you sign up for your mailing lists and things like that. Don't be doing that on work resources, because it's one of those situations that you could stumble upon a malicious website that was set up specifically to try to trap somebody, and it's just easier to avoid that type of thing, and you lower your exposure risk by keeping things limited to business use only. Wait till you get home to do your personal surfing and things like that, and it definitely lowers that risk factor a lot. As I mentioned, try to stay away from social media. I know a lot of companies use social media as a part of marketing. You got to be careful with it, but and I realize you can't completely stay off of it if that is the case. But if you don't use that, stay off of your Facebooks, your Instagrams, your whatever else, Twitters, your even LinkedIn. While LinkedIn is definitely a business access for a lot of companies, it's one of those situations where it can also be, used for fake entities and things like that, for gathering information and all kinds of stuff like that. So you just got to be vigilant and make sure that you're kind of verifying before just blindly letting people on your Facebook page or your LinkedIn page or things like that. Just so you're a little more careful. Keep your browsers updated. That's everything across the board, whether you're using Chrome, whether you're using Firefox, whether you're using Safari if you're a Mac shop, or Edge if you're Windows now. Just make sure that your browsers are being up to date. These browsers do have exploits in them sometimes, and they do get patched fairly frequently. And usually when you open a browser, it will tell you that, hey, there's an update at like one of the top windows or something. If you see that, make sure that you definitely apply that update as soon as you can, because if you do happen upon a malicious website that is looking to see if that exploit has been patched, if it isn't, it could leverage that hole before it was patched. Whereas if you do keep them patched, then it's one of those situations where you shouldn't fall victim to that then. Most of the browsers do auto update, as I mentioned, or at least notify you that there's updates. So again, just be vigilant about keeping an eye on any type of notifications or anything like that. Don't leave your browser windows open all the time. When you're done, make sure you close them down and then open a new browser window. That way, if there is an update, it'll pop that notice for you. So also be suspicious of pop-ups and download links. Pop-ups, are an easy way to get people to trick people. If I want you to click on a specific link or something, I can throw a whole bunch of. I'll send you to a web page that'll start firing off all kinds of adult-oriented pop-up windows that could be very embarrassing if someone sees, and you're going to panic. And when you panic, guess what? You're not thinking, and you just start randomly clicking on all these boxes just to close out all these windows that I'm firing on the screen for you. And one of them had a malicious link in it that sent you to a download and you didn't even realize it. So, it's one of those things. Again, it's very easy to do. So you got to just be careful. Most of the new browsers nowadays do have pop-up blockers in them, so it should stop majority of that. And the other thing too is if you do stumble upon a website that you're not 100% sure whether it's legit or not, instead of clicking on that close button or that X, usually there's an X X, like little X window at the top of the window there. Instead of clicking on one of those two areas, you could hit Control W on your keyboard. That will usually close the window with focus down, which is more likely than not that pop-up window. However, some of the ways that the web pages are coded, it may not be an actual window. It may be something called an iframe, but you can hit Alt F4, which will actually close your browser down completely. And the reason why you want to be cautious about clicking on one of those two areas is, again, because the bad guys know you're going to click on either that close button or that X button at the top there. And what they do is they put something called a pop under, which is another window underneath that. So when you click on one of those two areas there, it is going to close that window down, but it's also clicking that window underneath too. So it's doing two things at once, and it could be downloading something in the background that you may not even realize. So that's why you want to be careful about suspicious pop-ups and download links and things. So just be aware of that. So the other tactic too is something called browser in the browser attack. And this kind of leverages a couple different things. First of all, people don't like remembering passwords. They don't like having passwords and logins for multiple different sites. So what this is doing is this is leveraging something called SSO, or single sign-on. So what this is they realize that folks don't like to have all these different logins for all these different sites and things like that. So what this does is, if this site is leveraging a SSO integration, it could leverage one of your existing logins that you already have. And in most cases, it's something like your Apple ID, your Facebook. It could be your Google account, perhaps. Could be a Discord or Steam or things like that. So it's a situation where it's leveraging an existing login, and it will allow you to use that existing login on a different site. So it's leveraging that capability in the background. But the bad guys have realized that, hey, this is used pretty often, and we can actually utilize this against the people that are using it, perhaps. And it's extremely, extremely difficult to detect if that is the case. And I'll show you some examples here. So if you decide to use your excuse me, if you decide to use your Facebook account on a site that isn't Facebook, you want to use that SSO capabilities, but use your Facebook account. You can see here on the right hand side that this is in fact the real version of that. And then on the left hand side here, you can see this is actually the fake or phishing version of this. So this is the one that the bad guy would utilize if you happen to stumble upon a site that is leveraging one of these malicious versions of this. So first off, visually you can look at this and it is exactly the same. So there's nothing really alarming about that. For the technically minded folks, you can see there's actually a padlock here. You click on that padlock, it's going to say Facebook. Same thing over here. This padlock is there as well. If you click on that padlock, this is also going to say Facebook. So again, no red flags there. If you look at the URL here, if this was completely out to the full length, you would see that this URL is identical to the URL that's over here. So visually, there is absolutely no way for you to tell the difference between the real one and the fake one, which is why people fall for this. So what happens is, in the real version, what it's going to do is it's obviously going to hook you in and let you log into that website, and there's no harm, no foul. In the fake one, it's also going to let you log into that and let you link to it, but it is now sending your login information, which is your email address and your password, to the bad guys. So it's not only going to let you log into that site, it's going to steal your credentials and send it to the bad guys. That's what this fake version of this is physically doing. Again, very, very difficult to detect and extremely easy to fall for. So here's another example of it. This one just happens to be using Google. So the same concept here. Visually, you can look at this. Now, there is one minor visual difference here. On the real one, you can see here that there is no create an account thing, where on the fake one there is. That's just a minor issue. I wouldn't even think twice about that, because actually if you hover over that, it'll go to Google. and look like it's valid anyways. But again, everything, the padlocks are exactly the same. The SSL certs that are protecting these sites are exactly the same. The URL is the same. Regardless, everything you look at visually is pound for pound the exact same thing. So again, in this case, if you happen to put your information on the phishing one or the bad one, it's going to let you use it. However, it's going to send your Google information to the bad guys. So how do you stop this from happening? Well, first of all, my recommendation is be very, very careful where you use SSO in the first place, because you are always opening up yourself to this potential attack. That's my first advice. Me personally, I would log in with a different account across all my sites. That way, if one of them gets breached, I don't have to worry about 10 other sites that I'm using the same thing on. So in this case, if my Google account happens to get breached, guess what? Everywhere I'm using my Google account, I have to worry about now, where if I'm only using it at Google, I only have to worry about it at Google. That's my first recommendation. The second way that you can tell too is because of how the bad guys are leveraging this fake version of this. Here's how you can tell the difference if you do want to use SSO. So what you do is, if you are on a site where you want to try to leverage one of these methods using an existing login, you can actually go to the top bar here of the window that pops up, and try and right click it, and hold that in, and try to drag that off outside of your browser window. So obviously you're going to be on a web page here. What I want you to do is grab the top of that and try to drag this box outside of the browser window. If it is the real site, it will let you break out of the browser window, and it'll drop that part onto your desktop. So you'll still have this window, but now it'll be outside of the browser window. If that happens, that is the real one. If you try that with the fake one, what's going to happen is you're going to be contained within the browser itself. You will not be able to drag that box outside of the browser at all. It will stop you. And it's because of how this is being presented to the end user. It's not physically a separate window. It's just made to look that way. And it won't let you drag that window outside of the browser borders. So that's an easy way to tell if it's the real one or not, if you chose to use this. And that will work on regardless whether it's your Facebook or whatever method you're using. Just try to drag that window out. If it breaks the borders and opens up on its own outside of the browser, it's the real one. If it doesn't, don't put your information in there, because it's probably going to steal it and it's a fake site. So just be aware of that. So that leads us on to email tips. So there is some web stuff in here too, because it's kind of all related. But so again, just like the browsing thing, don't utilize your work email for personal usage. The bad actors tend to use a lot of tactics that try to manipulate people into thinking that it at least opening the email in the first place. So what do I mean by that? Same thing. Don't use your work email for your Amazon shopping, your Amazon purchases, your eBay buys, your gift card or your shopping lists over the holidays. Don't do any of that. Use your personal email for that. And the reason why is because, again, if you're not using your work email for those type of transactions, the bad guys like to use fake shipping notices, fake purchase notices, invoices, all kinds of things. And if you get one of those in your work email and that's not something you normally do, you're going to immediately say, oh, hey, this is coming from Amazon. I don't do any Amazon shopping in my work email. Delete. Don't even have to open it. If you do have to open it because you are doing that kind of thing and it is malicious, one is probably telling the bad guys that, hey, my email was opened. And there could be something in there that you inadvertently click on at that point, and could cause a security issue. So again, if you keep that type of activity isolated, it is so much easier to detect. You don't even have to open those emails. Like I said, if you get a PayPal notice, delete. I don't do PayPal on my work email. It's just instantaneous. You don't even have to think about it. So it gets rid of that whole second guessing and whatnot. Now, if you are a company that uses those type of things and does that type of things as a business, you just have to be careful. That's all I'm saying. So you have to be vigilant. But the best thing is to use separate emails where like instead of using your personal email, maybe use a separate email that you may have access to for those type of transactions. That way, if something comes into that one, it might be more legitimate than it would be coming into your own personal. And then you have to start figuring out again, is it real? Is it not real? And then you add that human factor into there. So the other thing to keep in mind is don't access your personal email. If you follow that first rule, don't access your personal email while connected to a work network or resource. So, I don't want you logging into the webmail for your Spectrum account while you're using your work PC, because if you do that and you open something up while you're using your work PC, it's the same thing as if you were using your work email for personal usage, because you're opening that up on work resources. Again, either wait till you get home to check your personal email, or if it's that important, use your cell phone on the data network, the cell network, and not connected to the wireless network at your job, and check your email there then. That way, again, you're isolating yourself away from your work resources, and it's much easier to keep that stuff separated. The other recommendation that I say, and this is mainly for people that use Microsoft Outlook for their email, which is predominantly the client that is used, unless you're a Mac. But it's one of those situations where if you are using the preview pane, or what is now called the reading pane, that is this section over here on the right that kind of shows you the contents of the email without you opening up the email. So you can see here, this first message is highlighted already, and it's highlighted automatically by this reading pane feature, and it will show you the contents of that email. So what happens is every email that comes in, this is going to open up as soon as it hits your inbox, because it opens the top message here. So you could be away from your desk and this thing is opening up emails and on your behalf, and you may not even know it until you get back. And if there happens to be a bad email or malicious email that was open, you won't know about it or realize it until after you get back to your desk. And again, it could tell the bad guy that, hey, there's got a live one here. We sent all these emails out and someone opened it up. So now you're going to be on a list, and they're going to send you even more emails because you opened that email up, and they know you opened that email up, and because this did it for you. Or maybe there's a malicious script that's attached to this and it got past the protection levels. Well, now that script is running on your machine, and you may not even know it too, because this automatically opened it up. Recommend turning it off. And to do that, obviously this you go to the view tab up here, and you'll see reading pane here. If you hit that drop down arrow there, it should say right bottom and off. You want to hit off there, and what will happen is this right hand side window here that shows the contents of the email will go away, and this will just expand out, and now you will have to double click the emails to open them, which is exactly what you want to do. You want to be the one interacting with your emails, not some automated software. So I know it's an extra click that you have to do, but sometimes security isn't always convenient. Unfortunately, they don't go hand in hand. So you want to be the one interacting with your email, because again, if this is a fake Amazon order and you didn't follow the recommendation to separate that stuff, this is opening that email, where now if you turn that off, you have to physically interact with that email. So again, it's you physically doing it, and you have that opportunity to question whether you want to do that or not, where this automated software would do it for you. So we mentioned that phishing emails is about 90 to 95% of the social engineering attacks. This is an example of what something like that looks like. It appears like it's coming from a known entity. In this case, it looks like it's coming from Microsoft Outlook, and it's saying your password's expired. And, hey, everyone's, oh my gosh, I can't go without my email. And hey, look, I'm even going to send you a handy link. If for you to change your password, I want you to click this link. And if one link isn't good enough, I'm going to send you a second link too, because you can change your password at this link too. So I'm so nice that I'm going to send you 2 convenient links here to possibly change your password, because we know how important your email is. And yes, I'm being a little condescending here. This is a fake email. It's not really coming from Microsoft. It's made to look like that. And those links that are there, if you follow my recommendation previously, where you don't click on download links and things like that, the same thing applies with emails. You should never, ever click on any embedded links that are in these unless you know for sure it is a safe email, or you're expecting it. What I want you to do instead, so instead of clicking on one of these two areas, I want you to go and open up a brand new browser, whether it's Chrome, Edge, Firefox, whatever your browser of choice is. I want you to go to Microsoft's site yourself and log in there using your credentials. And if this is a valid email, it will tell you the minute you try to log in that, hey, your password's expiring, you need to change it. What happens if you do click on these links? Much like the ones previously, what's going to happen is it's going to send you to a website that looks just like Microsoft. And if you're not careful visually, it'll probably ask you for your username, which is your email address, and your password. And you're going to put that in there, and it's probably going to come back with an error. Now, one of two things is going to happen here, depending on how tech savvy the bad guy is, that set that fake site up. So basically, you just got sent to a fake Microsoft site that is made to look like that, and it's stealing your credentials when you enter them in, much like that browser attack that I mentioned. So the issue is that it could just continually, obviously it's going to ask you for your credentials again because it didn't work, and it might just keep going through that, and eventually you're going to give up because it's just not working. You're going to think something's wrong with the site. It is working. However, it's not the real Microsoft site, so your logins are never going to work on that. What'll happen is it's sending your login credentials to the bad guys every time you enter it in there. Now, the tech savvy guys, the bad guys, what they'll do is they'll let you do that one time, and then they will redirect you to the real Microsoft site the second time. So when you put that information in there, it will work, and you're going to think you just mistyped or fat fingered your password the first time and not even think anything of it. You're not even going to realize that the first site was fake. So that's the tech savvy folks. But again, if you just follow my recommendation and not click on any of these links, it's easy to avoid that problem. So that's my recommendation. Go to the site yourself by you physically typing it in there. That way you are getting to the right site. It's another example of it. Just this one's a bank. So this is coming from a bank and asking you to some kind of authorized attempt outside of the country, and make sure to verify this. Click on this link. If you're a trusted bank customer and you're getting this in your email, instead of clicking that link, again, what I want you to do is open up a brand new browser. I want you to type in trustedbank.com. Go there yourself, log in, and somewhere in your information system there or message system there, this is going to be in there if this is valid. It's the easiest way to avoid these type of phishing attacks where they are enticing you to click on these links. Now, the only time you should click on a link is if it's something that you are literally expecting. Now, I will tell you, sometimes when you change passwords, it will send you, hey, did you just change your password? Or I forgot my password. In that case, obviously, it's something that you just generated and you were expecting a response out of that. That's probably safe to click. But if you're getting one of those out of the blue and it's not something you just initiated, never, ever, ever click on those. So just be aware of that. And if you ever have any questions, as mentioned in the chat here, that if you're never sure about an email and you're one of our clients, please call our service desk. Our service desk can quickly remote in and take a quick peek at it. If they're not sure, it'll actually come across my desk, and I'll take a look at it then, and I'll take a peek at it. But our service desk is usually really good at detecting the fake emails versus not fake emails. So the next thing here is called spear phishing. So spear phishing is a little more tactical. So the first phishing is kind of very broad. It's going after whoever they can get. Spear phishing is a little more targeted. So it's usually pretending either to be an internal employee or somebody that works for the company. They're trying to mimic that person. So in this case, this is usually targeted towards HR or payroll. And what they do, they pretend to be an internal employee, and they ask for their direct deposit information to be changed. If you don't have policies and procedures in place to verify that this is really the person making that request, you're going to end up sending someone's payroll to what is basically a drop account at a bank that was probably set up with stolen credentials. The minute that money hits, that money will be emptied out, that account will be closed, and the bad guy who set that up and sent this email is gone with the wind. And then you will have to reimburse the employee that you thought actually made this request their payroll, and then you've got to try to get your money back from the bad guy that stole it. So you need to make sure that you have policies and procedures in place that verify the authenticity of this request. You should never just blindly follow this type of request with email. You need to have the person come in physically and sign paperwork or something. That way, you know for a fact it's really the person making that request and not just someone pretending to be that employee. This is a tactic that the bad guys use time and time and time again. So just be aware of that. And whaling is going after the big fish or pretending to be the big fish. This usually is someone that's pretending to be a C-level and targeting someone that probably works underneath that C-level person and using that fear of authority or fear of questioning against the people that work underneath there. So in this case, this is again a financial transaction that's being requested. In this case, it's a wire transfer. Someone pretending to be the CFO and probably asking somebody in the finance department that is underneath that person hey, I'm out of the office, I'm busy, I need you to process me a wire transfer. Another tactic is gift cards. Go buy me some Amazon gift cards or eBay gift cards or whatever, and scratch off the thing and tell me what they are. Again, if you get any type of these requests via email only, you need to be talking to this person face to face and ensure that it's really this person making that request. Now, if they do happen to be out of the office, then you need to call them on a known phone number that should be on record somewhere so you can physically talk to this person at a known number. Never, never, never communicate with somebody that's sending their phone number along with this email because, again, it's a tactic that the bad guys use. They pretend to, be somebody they're not. And there's just people waiting for phone calls for numbers that may be attached to this email as well too. So again, you need to verify the authenticity of this because there's numerous people that fall for this all the time, and it's very easy to avoid by just simple policies and procedures to stop that just from doing it. So to be aware of that. So one of the things that you could do, if you're not already doing it, and if you're a client of ours and you're on this call, we probably have this set up for you already. If you're not a client of ours, we suggest that you do set this up. And this is basically a notification that is explaining that, hey, this email is coming from the outside. So when you get an email from the outside into your organization, it's going to have this yellow banner on it when you open that email up. Now you can also do a prepend saying it's external in the subject line here, so you can actually see that it's an external email as well without having to open it up. Either one of these methods is at least somewhat valid. I actually like the external one because then I don't have to open the email up, but I know a lot of clients don't do that. They use just the content here. So why is this important? Well, if we go back to the last two slides here, if this is a person pretending to be somebody on the inside and it's not. So what will happen is if you get an email like this and you have that external banner notification turned on, the minute you open this email up, it's going to have that banner up above at the top of the message. So immediately that should throw up a red flag for you in this case. So, hey, wait a minute, this is someone from inside and it's saying it's coming from the outside. That is a red flag. So you should be questioning that, because if this is really an internal employee emailing you, it would not have that external banner because it's being routed inside your organization. The only way that would be true is if they're using their personal email address, and that would be questionable too. So in this case, it's a huge red flag that, wait a minute, something's not driving here because it's coming from the outside, yet it's supposedly my coworker. That's immediately. Same thing on this one here. With the wire transfer. Again, this one would have that banner on it as well. So again, it's one of those situations where it's a huge visual red flag that you should be questioning. And if you're not using it, you should be using it because, again, it's extremely extremely helpful in at least putting that gut feel in you, saying, wait, something's not right here, inside email, but coming from the outside, it just doesn't make sense. Now granted, every outside email is going to have this. That's the whole point of it. But it's really to stop some of those tactics that are pretending to be inside folks. Another thing that the bad guys are doing is they're realizing that people are getting a little smarter. And sometimes they're not clicking on the links. They're listening to Brian and not clicking on the links. They're not doing this. They're questioning everything. So how can we get past them? Because this guy is ruining all our tactics. Well, they've come up with a new one. So this is called consent phishing. And what it is, it's designed with a malicious Microsoft app. So what it does is you may be clicking on something or whatever, and this is going to pop up saying, hey, permissions requested. And if you're not careful here and you just blindly hit accept, you read down through here carefully, what you're actually doing is in this case, this is a malicious app. You are basically giving the bad guys the keys to your Microsoft kingdom. So what does that mean? That means they have full-blown access to all your emails, all your contacts, any files you have up there, any SharePoint, any Teams, anything. They have complete and full-blown access because you just gave it to them by hitting accept there. And this also bypasses multi-factor too, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So if you ever get one of these windows pop up and you're not sure, please, if you're a client of ours, call our desk. We can remote in quickly and check this out. Now, there are some valid cases where these are leveraged for third-party apps. You shouldn't see these unless you're installing something new. However, again, if you find one of these, please let us know, because once you click on that, it is difficult to detect after the fact. And again, the bad guys are going to wreak havoc once you do that. So just be aware of that. And the other thing here is quishing. So this is the utilization of QR codes, and this became a big thing for a couple of reasons. One, obviously COVID, a lot of places went to QR codes for touchless menus and things like that. The other thing too is that you can't really see where this is sending you because it uses shortened URLs too. So if you happen to scan this with your phone, which is what it's designed to do, it will send you to a website that is the URL is shortened, so you don't necessarily know where you're going until you get there. So again, if you're doing it on your phone, it's real difficult sometimes to see if it's the real site or malicious site, because the footprint of the screen's hard to determine. So just be very, very careful what you're scanning with your phone and when you're blindly following these things. And an example of that is, I think it was 2 years ago during a Super Bowl commercial, somebody, I forget what company it was, but it was brilliant. They actually paid for an ad. It was during halftime or something, and it was just a QR code bouncing around on a blank screen. It was like the old days of Pong for those of us that remember the Atari days. It was just bouncing back and forth and they got over 1 million people to scan that code. During the Super Bowl, nobody knew what it was. There was no writing. There was no nothing. It was just this code bouncing across the screen. And in that case, it was perfectly harmless, but 1 million people actually broke out their phones and scanned that thing without even knowing what it was. That just goes to show you how easy it is to manipulate 1 million people. It's that simple. So it's just be careful what you're doing. That's all I can say with that. So the next thing is obviously USB, mobile, and network devices. So if you ever, USB is like the USB flash keys that we used to be a big thing, and maybe not so big anymore. But if you ever find one of those laying around, please, if you don't know who it belongs to, don't just blindly plug that into your machine. Hold on. If you're a client of ours, hold on to it till one of our engineers is on site. Give it to them. We can take a look at it and try to figure out who the owner is, if it's malicious, if it's not malicious, and then we'll return it. We just want to make sure that it's safe. There could be something on that the minute you plug it in, it could potentially install something or run something in the background that'll let a bad actor in later on down the road without you realizing it. So if you do happen to use those, so some of our architectural companies use those because of the drawing sizes and stuff. If you do happen to use these, just make sure you're doing virus scans on them so that you're not inadvertently bringing something in from the outside into your network. or if you're transferring stuff from your work to home, maybe photos or something, the same thing. Make sure you're doing virus scans at both ends, so nothing is potentially getting installed or added to that USB key that you could technically bring back in from the outside into your work network. The other thing too is, this is also a new recent thing too. So you may have seen an article about this. They actually breached a military entity by doing this, a DoD facility, where they blindly sent in a whole bunch of Apple Watches that were compromised. Of course, the soldiers got them, didn't question where they came from. They got them. Hey, I got a free Apple Watch. Woohoo! All right, great, yeah. And they, of course, the first thing they do is connect it to the wireless network, and now they're inside of a Department of Defense facility. And this is very easy. You can do it with iPads. You can do it with whatever, phones, laptops. If you're getting electronic devices sent via the mail and weren't ordered, be very, 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 very cautious of what you're using that for, because more likely than not, it's got something in it that is tracking your behavior or trying to steal your stuff. It could be Alexa's, access points, anything like that. Just be very, very careful and make sure you're verifying who's sending it to you and why they're sending it to you in the first place. Everybody has a smartphone nowadays, and these things are great, powerful little handheld devices, but they're also battery hogs. So what I recommend is, a lot of these are done via USB cords. Make sure that when you are doing that, if you need to charge that you're not using your work PC or desktop laptop. You're not plugging that cord into the side of your laptop to charge your phone. What I want you to do is to use the little wall brick or the little cord that actually plugs into the electrical outlet. Use that to charge your phone, not your computer. Because what you may not realize is while plugging it into your laptop and desktop or work device will charge your phone, it also turns your phone into a USB key. So if there happens to be something malicious on that phone that is just waiting to be plugged into a PC, it could potentially steal stuff off your PC or something like that, and you may not even realize it. So again, if you just bring your wall charger and use that instead of your work computer, that'll alleviate that problem. Other thing too, public wireless charging stations or public charging stations, another big problem. And you've probably seen that. I've been talking about this for a very, very long time, and now it's hit mainstream media because it's become a huge problem that now everybody's jumping on the bandwagon to inform people. Don't use public wireless charging stations. It's that simple, because you can't tell if they're good ones or if they're malicious ones. I'm not saying all of them are malicious out there, but again, the same concept. If you go to plug into that public charging station at the airport, at the coffee shop, at the wherever, the hotel, if it's a malicious one, you're going to plug your phone into that, and it's going to turn your phone into a USB device. It's going to charge it, but it's going to steal everything off your phone. It's going to steal your contacts, your emails, your files, photos, everything. It's going to suck everything off your phone while you're charging it. So now there are cables and stuff out there that are designed to stop that. Again, the easiest way is carry your wall brick with you. Just carry this thing with you. It's small enough. You can air travel with it. It fits in your pocket if you're a guy, or a purse if you carry one of those. So it's one of those things where you can easily carry that with you because they're so small, and you're not going to get infected with the electrical outlet. So that's my recommendation there. So that leads us to passwords, and we're wrapping this up here very shortly. My recommendation is complex, secure, and unique passwords. What does that mean? At this point, my recommendation is 11 characters at a minimum, and I'll tell you why here in a second. It has to contain at least one special character. It also has to have at least one uppercase letter and at least one number. So it has to contain at least one of those three and be 11 characters long. And everyone's probably saying, how am I going to remember all these passwords? And for each site, you're telling me I need, individual logins for each site. How am I going to remember all this stuff? That's why I use easy passwords and the same one everywhere I go. Well, there's a couple of ways you can store those type of passwords. You can use online managers. Those are the, facilities that will not only create some of these passwords for you, but also auto-populate them when you go to the website, when they're needed, things like that, and they will store them for you. So they will do that. I personally don't use those. First of all, big targets for the bad guys. And if you remember in the first slide, I showed you those companies with logos on it. One of those is a online password manager, and that company has now been breached 4 times. Again, it's one of those things where the bad guys know where the passwords are, so of course they're going to be huge targets. I'm not saying you can't use them. I just personally don't use them because everybody knows that's where the passwords are, so they're huge targets. I store my passwords in a way that is done securely. I keep them on myself. So what I do is I actually put them in a text file. Now that text file is stored in an encrypted USB key. So in order for me to access that text file, I have to know one password. It's 23 characters long. I have that password memorized. That password would then unlock that access to that USB key, and then I can kind of view my passwords in there. Now, my passwords in that list are not necessarily written pound for pound. So my passwords are stored on that list in an encrypted fashion too. And sometimes I actually show that list during some of my presentations here because I'm confident enough that no one's ever going to figure out what the password is anyways. And how do I do that? Well, I sometimes have missing characters on those passwords. I know where the missing characters are, whether it's at the beginning, excuse me, whether it's at the end. I know what those missing characters are. It's the same on every single one of my passwords that are on that list. I know what to fill in. The people that are looking at it don't. So what they're going to do is they're going to try the password the way it's written. Doesn't work. They're going to go to the next one. Doesn't work. Go to the next one. Doesn't work. They're going to be, okay, password list is old. Doesn't work. Forget it. Move on. But I know there's missing characters there. So I populate those missing characters when I go to enter that password in, and my password works. So the other thing is you can do is add extra characters. So you can add characters that don't mean anything, that you just have to skip when you're entering those in. Again, if someone visually looks at that, they're going to see that password and use it for what it is. Now with the extra characters, it's a little more, you have to be a little more careful with that. And the reason why is you can't use the same added characters on every single one of your passwords, because someone looking at that is going to say, oh, well, there's an A and a B at the beginning and a C at the end on every one of these passwords. Maybe they're extra characters and they're going to peel them off. You need to randomize those extra characters. It doesn't matter what they are because they're just fillers anyways, but it keeps that visual thing, and there's software out there that'll do it too. It'll keep that from being able to guess that those are added characters in the first place. So just be aware of that. So why do we recommend 11 digits? It used to be 9. In fact, it used to be 8 at one point last year. Then it jumped up to 9 towards the end of the year. Well, you can see here that in 2022, that nine digits passwords is, well, 8-digit passwords is guessed in under 39 minutes. That's every possible combination of an 8-digit password can be guessed with current hardware in under 39 minutes. So every possible combination can be gone through in 39 minutes or less. So eventually they're going to get your password if it's an 8-digit. So, at 10, it would be 5 months. So I think at the end of the year, we were recommending 10 digits because it was at the 5-month mark. It may have been 9, I forget, but we've changed it now to 11, only because you can see here back in last year, that was 34 years to guess an 11-digit password. Well, guess what? Now we're in 2023. That 11 years went to 3 years. So they just shaved off a lot of years because the hardware is getting faster and faster and faster. And the faster the hardware gets, the faster you can guess those combinations. So I guarantee you by the end of this year, we're going to be up into the 13, 14 range, only because you have to, because this is probably going to drop to under, it'll be down to months by the end of this year, guaranteed. So that's why we have that. The idea is that you're also changing your password every 3 months. So you're changing your password faster than they could potentially guess it. Now, there's always a chance that they can get it in that period of time because it's just randomized going through every combination. They could hit the combination, but to get through everything and make sure they get it, it's one of those situations where it would take that long. So that's why we recommend So finishing up here real quick, I know we're running out of time. Multi-factor, we talked about that a little bit. That is a thing of knowing your password, but it's also asking you for, it's either a push to your phone or a code that's on your phone. So you have to have your phone in order to log in too. You put your username and password in there, and it's going to prompt you for a code, or it's going to push you, hey, is this you logging in? And you hit accept. And it's another means of keeping the bad guys out. It's not 100% foolproof, but it is definitely better than not having that in the first place. Now, the other thing is the bad guys realize that a lot of people are using that push technology, and what they'll do is if your credentials are compromised, they will send you multiple pushes, and until you finally get frustrated with it and hit yes. And just keep in mind, this only works if your credentials have been compromised already. So if you're all of a sudden you're using push and you're all of a sudden getting all these messages coming in asking for approval, please do not hit accept, because that's the only thing keeping the bad guys out. What you need to do is, if you're a customer of ours, call us, let us know what account is prompting you for those, and we need to change your password immediately because that password has been compromised or figured out. So we do that, and all of a sudden those MFA requests are going to go away. But again, they're going to bombard you with all those requests to try to get you to hit yes, because you're so tired of the alerts hitting your phone just back to back to back to back to back to back to back. So it's a method that they're trying to get past that multi-factor. So with that, obviously, just for quick follow-ups here, don't click links within emails, open up new browsers, make sure you're verifying who's you're claiming to be interacting with in emails. Don't just blindly assume that. Make sure you're using strong passwords and MFA. Store those passwords in a secure method, whether it's online or on your person in some encrypted way. If any employees do leave on their own or get terminated, make sure those accounts are being disabled. And then also regularly back up your data, and just in the event that you would need to recover something, because that's your saving grace. So hopefully this was enlightening to you. As I mentioned, we do these, on a monthly basis. You can get more information, obviously, at the next one. I'm sure the content will change slightly. So hopefully that gives you a good idea, and at least gives you the ability to question some things too. So if you have any questions, I don't see anything in chat right now. Now's the time to ask if you do have any questions. If you have any questions after the webinar here, you can obviously send them to info@pcatg.com. And if you are interested in any type of other security-oriented stuff, whether it's for business or even personal use, we do have a YouTube channel that has some podcast there. I talk about social media. I talk about public wireless at coffee shops and things like that, why to avoid those. They're about 15 minutes or so, very enlightening. And it's useful for not only, business, but also personal too. If you have kids, you might want to definitely listen to the Facebook one, the social media one, just so you can protect your children too as well. With that, I thank you for your time. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to let you have at it. I apologize for going over just a hair here, but everyone have a great day and stay safe out there. Take care, everybody.